Here we go. Number 10, Project Stargate. Picture this. You're sitting in a cramped, windowless room, a pair of oversized headphones pressed to your ears, and some government dude with a haircut from 1983 is staring at you, waiting. Your mission? To find a top-secret submarine somewhere in the Pacific Ocean, not with $1 million satellite, but with your mind. That's right, just your mind. Welcome to the wonderful world of Project Stargate, the declassified CIA program dedicated to training psychics for military reconnaissance. They spent decades and millions of your taxpayer dollars looking for people who could, and I quote, remote view. Which is basically the psychic equivalent of a Google Earth search. Only instead of a keyboard, you use your third eye and a sense of detached existential dread. The idea was to find people who could close their eyes and through sheer mental force see things happening thousands of miles away. They'd get a sheet of paper with coordinates on it, say a Soviet military base in Siberia, and then they'd just meditate on it. One remote viewer claimed to have accurately described an entire Soviet bomber base from a sketch. Another supposedly found a missing fighter jet in Zaire. The reports are a hilarious mix of vague, semi-accurate descriptions and wild hallucinogenic nonsense. It's like getting a text from your drunk friend at 3 a.m. trying to describe a street fight he just witnessed. Yeah, man, there was a really big rock and then a kind of pointy thing and some numbers, I think. The program was shut down in the mid-90s, not because they proved it didn't work, but because a government review found the psychic insights were just too vague to be useful. Basically, they were told that their psychics were about as helpful as a magic 8-ball, and they finally decided to just use regular spies instead. It's a hilarious, infuriating reminder that sometimes the most sophisticated government intelligence isn't about satellites or secret agents. It's about a bunch of grown adults earnestly trying to make their brains do the impossible. Number 8. Operation Acoustic Kitty. Cats, their fluffy little bundles of aloof indifference, a walking, talking masterclass in not giving a single crap about anything other than napping and plotting your demise. But to the CIA in the 1960s, a cat wasn't just a pet, it was a potential espionage asset. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the mind-bending reality of Operation Acoustic Kitty, a project so profoundly absurd it sounds like something a 10-year-old would invent with a box of old junk and a desire to foil a villain. The plan? Turn a real, live cat into a mobile surveillance device. The government spent 5 years and an estimated $20 million, adjusting for inflation of course, surgically implanting a microphone in a cat's ear canal, a tiny radio transmitter in its skull, and a thin wire antenna down its fluffy spine. The ultimate goal was to have the cat sit near a foreign dignitary, a Soviet official, or some other person of interest and secretly eavesdrop on their conversations. Now, if you have ever had a cat, you know exactly how this story ends. They got the cat all wired up and ready to go for its first real field test, eavesdropping on 2 guys in a park across the street from the Russian embassy. They released the cyborg feline, and what did the highly trained, surgically enhanced spy cat do? It immediately trotted out into the street and was promptly hit by a taxi. The operation, much like the poor feline, was dead on arrival. The entire endeavor was a magnificent multi-million-dollar testament to the fact that you simply cannot make a cat do anything it doesn't want to do, even for the sake of national security. It's a perfect example of how the most brilliant minds can come up with the most stupid ideas when they're given enough money and zero oversight. Number 7. MKUltra. Before you get too comfortable in your tinfoil hat, let me tell you about a declassified CIA program that makes even the most paranoid conspiracy theorists' jaw drop. I'm talking about MKUltra, a sprawling, unethical, and unbelievably reckless series of human experiments designed to test everything from mind control and hypnosis to chemical interrogation and torture. The CIA was obsessed with the idea of creating a Manchurian candidate, a sleeper agent who could be programmed to carry out a mission without knowing it. They were so desperate to get a leg up on the Soviets in the Cold War, they decided the best way to do that was to throw out every single ethical rule book and just see what happens. They dosed unsuspecting citizens, including patients in psychiatric hospitals, prisoners, and even soldiers, with LSD and other hallucinogens. They performed sensory deprivation experiments and used electroshock therapy. They even hired a literal magician to help them with misdirection. I'm not making this up. The program was so secretive, and its records so deliberately destroyed, that we still don't know the full extent of the damage it caused. It's a real-life horror show that proves the scariest monster isn't some guy in a hockey mask. It's a government agency with a blank check and no moral compass. Their entire line of reasoning was, if we can't control people's minds, at least we can prove that they can't be controlled. That's like setting your house on fire to prove that smoke alarms work. So next time you feel a sudden, inexplicable urge to do something weird, you can thank your brain for a random firing of neurons, or you can blame the government for all those decades of messing with our heads. Number 6, Project Iceworm. Imagine a world where the Cold War was so frosty, so utterly paranoid, that someone, somewhere in the Pentagon, thought it was a brilliant idea to build a nuclear-powered military base under the Greenland ice sheet. Not a small bunker, a whole city, with a hospital, a theater, and even a chapel, all buried 150 feet below a continent-sized block of ice. This isn't the plot of a B-movie, this is Project Iceworm. The plan was to create a network of tunnels big enough to house hundreds of soldiers, and more importantly, a secret stash of nuclear missiles, all for the express purpose of making them impossible for the Soviets to find. The name of the city, by the way, Camp Century. It's like they designed a supervillain lair and then forgot to give it a properly evil name. For 4 years in the early 1960s, a team of U.S. Army Corps of Engineers carved out a labyrinth of tunnels using modified snow-trenching machines. They built a fully operational base, powered by a portable nuclear reactor, and had a team of 200 soldiers living in a self-contained world of ice and paranoia. It was an engineering marvel, a testament to American ingenuity and Cold War bravado. The only problem? It was a geological nightmare. See, ice sheets aren't static. They flow, they shift, they move slowly but with an unstoppable crushing force. The engineers had completely underestimated the immense pressure of the moving ice, and it wasn't long before the walls and ceilings of their tunnels began to buckle and collapse. The whole base was slowly, relentlessly being squeezed to death. The project was abandoned in 1966, the nuclear reactor removed, and the entire city was left to be entombed by the ever-advancing glacier. Basically, the military, in all its genius, had tried to outsmart a glacier and lost. It's a humbling reminder that sometimes the Earth is just way more powerful than our most advanced weapons and our most ridiculous ideas. Number 5, the Simple Sabotage Field Manual. Have you ever been in a meeting that should have taken 10 minutes but somehow stretched on for 2 hours? Have you ever had to deal with a project that was a model of efficiency until it hit a bureaucratic roadblock and ground to a halt? Well, congratulations. You might just be the unwitting victim of a declassified document from the Office of Strategic Services, or OSS, which was the precursor to the CIA. This is the Simple Sabotage Field Manual, a real, honest-to-God guide on how to subtly, yet effectively, ruin an enemy organization from the inside out. The manual was created during World War II, and it lists dozens of ways ordinary citizens could act as saboteurs. The irony is, these methods aren't about bombs or explosions. They're about pure, unadulterated, passive-aggressive uselessness. The list of sabotage techniques is eerily familiar. To slow down production, the manual instructs you to insist on doing perfect work even though it is not necessary. To ruin morale, bring up irrelevant issues as often as possible. To delay meetings, you should talk at great length and at every opportunity about your own personal experiences. And my personal favorite, to lower morale and create delays, always refer back to matters decided upon at the last meeting and attempt to reopen the question of the advisability of that decision. The document is a perfect, hilarious mirror of our modern world. It basically says, here's how to ruin an organization from the inside. And a large part of the corporate world looked at it and said, oh, so that's what we're supposed to be doing? It's a magnificent, beautiful testament to the fact that sometimes the best way to destroy something isn't with a sword, but with a mountain of unnecessary paperwork and a committee meeting that should have been an email. Number 4, the CIA's UFO files. If you've ever found yourself scrolling through late-night forums, searching for shaky videos of strange lights in the sky, and wondering if the truth is really out there, you're not alone. You're also, apparently, in good company with the Central Intelligence Agency. For decades, the CIA denied having any official interest in unidentified flying objects, or UFOs, which is an acronym that sounds so much more legit than, what the heck is that? But the truth, as always, was hiding in plain sight. Thanks to the magic of declassification, we now know that the agency has a massive, decades-long paper trail of official investigations into flying saucers, strange aerial phenomena, and the general possibility of little green men popping down for a visit. You'd think the big reveal would be some dramatic confirmation of alien life, right? Maybe a grainy photo of a saucer or a report on a crashed spacecraft. What the documents actually reveal is something far funnier and way more human. They show that for years, the CIA was desperately trying to figure out if these objects were Soviet spies, new American tech they didn't know about, or, just something totally weird. The reports often read like an overly detailed but ultimately inconclusive police report. Witness claims to have seen a pulsating light. The light was green, it moved erratically. The witness was an elderly man who had consumed 2 bottles of wine. Over and over again, the conclusion is the same. The objects were almost always misidentified aircraft, weather balloons, atmospheric conditions, or just flat-out hoaxes. The single most compelling thing about these files isn't that they prove aliens are here. It's that they prove the government was just as mystified and confused as we were. The biggest secret the government was hiding wasn't about aliens, but about the fact that they spent a fortune trying to track down a lot of very fancy balloons. Number 3, the gateway process. Your brain is a weird, squishy meat computer, and for a while, the government wanted to see if they could get it to run some unofficial software. I'm talking about the gateway process, a declassified 1983 report from the U.S. Army detailing a bizarre and fascinating program designed to achieve an altered state of consciousness using meditation and sound waves. The entire program was based on a form of audio technology called hemisync, short for hemispheric synchronization, which was invented by a retired military man and businessman named Robert Monroe. The idea was that by listening to specific sound patterns, your brain could be entrained to a frequency that puts you in a state of hyperfocus, out-of-body awareness, and even what they called a transcendental state. In layman's terms, they were trying to build a psychic soldier. The document is a wild mix of legitimate science and borderline spiritual woo-woo. It describes a human consciousness hologram, the idea that by reaching a specific brain state, you could tune into the vibrational reality of another person or place. The CIA was trying to see if they could use this to find out what was happening in a Soviet bunker or a military base without ever leaving their chairs. It's like they were trying to build their own version of the Force. The report even has a section on time travel, though it quickly dismisses it as a non-issue because you can only observe the past, not change it. The whole thing reads like a sci-fi novel written by a very serious, very confused physicist. The program was ultimately abandoned, presumably because you can't really pay someone to sit in a room and have an out-of-body experience and expect anything useful to come of it. So, while they didn't create any Jedi Knights, they did leave behind a paper trail that proves the government once funded what basically amounts to a really expensive meditation app. Number 2, Project Quicksilver. You know what's even crazier than training a cat to be a spy? Training a dolphin to be one. Not just one, but a whole program of dolphins and sea lions to serve in the military. This isn't a plot from a 90s comedy. It's the declassified reality of a program run by the US Navy. The documents reveal that the military began using dolphins and sea lions in the 1960s for a number of purposes, all of which sound like they were pulled from a fever dream. Dolphins, with their advanced echolocation, were used to find underwater mines and retrieve lost equipment. Sea lions, with their excellent underwater eyesight and agility, were trained to spot and capture enemy divers. They even developed a system where the animals would carry a special tool that would attach a clamp to a diver's leg, allowing them to be captured and hauled to the surface. It's the most high-tech, yet completely ridiculous game of tag you could ever imagine. Imagine you're an enemy diver, sneaking around a naval base, thinking you're being all slick and secret. You're scanning the murky depths, expecting a human patrol or maybe a surveillance drone. And then, out of the darkness, a bottlenose dolphin with a military harness and a clamp in its mouth just swims up to you and attaches a piece of equipment to your leg. You'd think you had gone insane. The military went to great lengths to make this all work, building special habitats and training facilities. They even came up with a system to give the animals treats when they completed their missions, which means your life as a spy could be ruined by a highly trained, highly motivated dolphin just trying to get some fish. The program is a perfect example of how the military, when faced with a problem, will often resort to the most bizarre and animal-based solution possible, because apparently human spies are just too expensive and hard to train. The biggest secret they were hiding was that the most effective underwater spy wasn't James Bond, but a creature that looks like it's perpetually smiling. Number 1, the CIA's truth serum. There's a reason why in every single spy movie, the interrogator always brings out a syringe of truth serum to get the bad guy to spill their secrets. It's because the idea of a magic potion that makes you tell the truth is one of the most compelling and terrifying concepts imaginable. And for a long, long time, the CIA desperately wanted it to be real. Their declassified records show decades of failed attempts to find a working truth drug. They tested everything. They tried LSD, cannabis, and a cocktail of depressants and stimulants. They even created a concoction called scopolamine, which they called the truth drug, and injected it into people they wanted to interrogate. The results? They were a complete and utter disaster. See, the CIA scientists made a massive miscalculation. They assumed that a drug that made you more suggestible, more talkative, and less inhibited would somehow make you tell the truth. But what they found was that it just made people more likely to talk. And what they talked about was a rambling, confused mess of fantasy, gibberish, and outright lies. It turned out that under the influence of these drugs, people were just as likely to make up a wild story about a dragon-riding spy ring as they were to reveal any actual information. The CIA's own internal reports concluded that truth serums were unreliable and dangerous because they didn't induce truth, they induced nonsense. They had created the perfect drug to get someone to tell a hilarious drug-fueled fantasy and nothing else. If you want to find the truth, it turns out you actually have to do some real work. That's all for today. Stay tuned for similar videos in the future. Subscribe to see them.